Hey there, guys. Mr. Biz, your good old buddy here. This is part 3 of 4 in our series on how to optimize your business as we're adjusting to this new normal, etc. And so, again, I'm making 4 quick videos. This one, we're going to talk about avoiding the silent business killer. I'm going to tell you what that is. So, here's what it is. Again, I'm trying to make these videos pretty quick, all 4 of them. Try to keep them around 4 or 5 minutes long. So before you get back to your normal 100% activity, many of you have had to hit the pause button and maybe even all the way paused, right? Stopped. But as you're getting back into it, the first step you should take is to check and recheck and triple check all of your pricing for every product you do, every service you do. And that's what leads me to the silent business killer. And what the silent business killer is, almost every business unknowingly has a product or service or products or services that are actually unprofitable. You're actually losing money for every one of these products or services that you sell. I call it the silent business killer because, of course, when I tell owners this, hey, we got to check your pricing, the silent business killer, and they say, well, Ken, of course I don't have unprofitable products or services. Unfortunately, history has proven and my experience has proven that almost all businesses do. You just don't realize it. Hence why I call it the silent business killer. So the example, I'll give you a real quick example that I had with a client. Before I started working with him, he priced out a large commercial project that would have been about 20% of his annual revenue. Okay, so huge project. He bid very aggressively, did not consider all of his costs when he was doing this. Long story short, we get to the end of the job. He charged $220,000 for the job. When we went back, and then subsequent to all this, it was a long project, of course, I started working with him after the fact, after he'd bid and everything. So we get to the end of the year, we start looking at revenue, and I'm starting to peel back the onion a little bit on things, and we're looking at pricing. And I looked at that particular job, and the job actually cost him about $270,000 to do it, right? So keep in mind, he charged $220. He charged $220, but it cost him $270. So he lost $50,000 on that job. Now it looked great. His revenue was up by $220,000, right? It looked fantastic on the revenue side, on the top line, but the pricing was off. There were several elements that he had bid too aggressively, and he was not considering all of his costs. So it's not just obviously your operational costs, your cost of goods sold, those things that move with your production, but a lot of the overhead things that he hadn't considered. Very, very important. And the other thing you need to do is make sure that whatever you want to have as your gross profit percentage, and more importantly, your net profit percentage. Now, some of you might say, okay, you just lost me there. Okay, so really quick, your net margin percentage it's your net income divided by your total sales, your total revenue. And so what that basically means in real easy terms is, of the revenue that you bring in the front door, how much of it ends up in your pocket at the end of the day? How much of it ends up in your pocket? How much money do you make from that? How much do you keep? After all your expenses and everything's all said and done, your net margin percentage is, again, your net income divided by your total sales, total revenue. So that's the most important measure there is, right? Who cares about, a lot of people quote these gross profit margin numbers that are massive, but then, they have a bunch of stuff in overhead, and their overhead is killing them, right? You could have a 80% gross profit margin and be losing money. Doesn't sound like it right on the surface, but it is very true. It happens more frequently than I care to. Hopefully not, you guys are not in that boat. So very, very important. So this is going to tell you a couple different things. As you go through this and you really dive into this pricing piece, it's going to tell you, where do you need to put your activities, right? Where do you need to shift more of your marketing or your sales focus? Because obviously you want to push those efforts towards your higher margin products, so you're making more money on those things. You may have some products that you barely make any money on, but it's expected that because you provide X, Y, and Z service that you also have this. That's okay. That's okay. But you don't want to push those services, and you want to make sure that you're at least making a little bit of money. You have at least a thin margin on those products. And the other thing that it could shine a light on, again, is that you might need to discontinue a product or service, because what you might find is the price at which you need to charge to make money isn't competitive in the marketplace. And so you can continue to put it out there, or you can just say, you know what, we don't offer that anymore. Again, it depends. As I mentioned earlier, is if it's something that's expected in your industry that you would offer as a complementary service or product to something else you do, you may want to keep that, but you still want to make sure you price it, because if people don't want to pay that price, it's okay. Because again, you don't want to fall victim to the silent business killer. You don't want to have those. And because I had this in another client where they had a product like that, was very thin margins, and they were actually, it was the lowest margin product. And then on top of that, with this particular vendor customer they were using, they're losing money because of having to redo things for them and things like that. Long story, but that's the only product that customer was buying from my client. So every single time they bought, we were losing money. So terrible situation. The silent business killer, you want to avoid that. Terrible, terrible situation. So this has been video 3 or 4. You can go check out the other videos. I put a link in the thing to be able to see the other videos if you missed the other ones, to check them out. Try to keep these pretty quick. Hopefully these are very helpful. I got one more video that we're going to do. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a flash with the cash.